So in our topic, we wanted to talk about scaling Agile, scaling Scrum, scaling teams. So yeah, let's just jump into it. How would you talk to a company that wants to scale Agile? How would you engage with them, or how would you train or coach them on scaling Scrum or Agile?
Yeah, I think the first question is how do you know you need that many people right now? How do you know you don't need, 10 people, 9 people? How do you know you need to scale? So
Yeah.
I guess I would ask, what problem are you trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think, or, you know, what is your goal? And what are we optimizing for? And
Mm-hmm.
once we know those things, it's like, well, how many people are actually doing the work?
Mm-hmm.
And what advantages do we have by adding multiple teams? Because every time you add more teams, you lose a
Mm-hmm.
little bit from that first team. So if we
Mm.
got one team that can solve a problem and we add another team, that first team just lost a bunch of efficiency. They lost a bunch of effectiveness. They're going to produce less because they have to coordinate with that other team.
Yeah.
Now you add a third team. Now the first and the second team lose a little bit, and the third teams comes in and they're not going to, they got to catch up. And so every time you're adding a team, you're losing something. And so you need to be able to measure how much value is being added by each team and kind of know when to stop scaling and adding more teams.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, though, that I see with most organizations is that when they decide to scale,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to add like a product owner over each
Mm-hmm.
team. And then they say,
Yeah.
well, they need to coordinate and sync, and there's dependencies between them. And
Yeah.
so then they put another product owner, an Uber product owner, over the top of that product owner. Maybe they call it a product manager or
Yeah.
something like that. And then they'll add another one on top of that. And then they're like, we have technology concerns and we need tech leads at each of those levels. And
Yeah.
we need to have, someone that can help manage the dependencies. We'll call
Yeah.
them a scrum master, an agile coach that, they'll rename these things that they aren't are. I actually walked into one organization one time and they had
Mm-hmm.
just as many people that were up there on that product owner, transformation, tech lead, scrum master level, people
Yeah.
not doing the work to the people that were actually developing doing the work. So, I mean, if you scale 50 people and you have 25 that are telling you how to work and 25 people doing the work, that doesn't work very well, right? Like, there's not a lot of autonomy. There's a lot of churn, a lot of work that's getting created. And so people create a lot of work when that ends up happening. So I call that scaling demand. So the demand is the demand of work, more work's being generated, instead of scaling
Mm-hmm.
delivery, the people that actually
Mm-hmm.
deliver the work. So when
Yeah.
we scale, if we are going to scale, we want to scale the problem solving teams that can solve
Mm-hmm.
any problem that's off of your product backlog.
Yeah.
Uh, then that's not typical. Another common pattern is a lot of organizations will create teams that are aligned around subsystems. So maybe it's an
Mm-hmm.
application, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's like we have a database team, we got a back end team, we got a front end team, we got a QA team, maybe not even a QA
Yeah.
team anymore, a UX team, or a Salesforce team, or something else, down the road.
Yeah.
And then there's handoffs between each of those teams, and each of those teams have a
Mm-hmm.
backlog. Well, that's a lot of dependency management. How do you know what the
Yeah.
most important thing is?
Right.
Those aren't really great patterns either for scaling, because you're
Yeah.
just adding a lot of churn into the system and delay when you scale like that.
Yeah. No, that example is so real. I've actually been in a situation where I was a Scrum Master. This was a few years ago, and we had an Agile coach come in, and she was helping out with some Agile Scrum stuff, doing some assessment, things like that. And we have a product owner, and we have a technical product owner, and we had two developers, and there were so many people actually managing the work, and people who are doing the work were just like two people. And that's really interesting that you brought that example.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, and that so brings up another thing. Like when you talk about a product owner, when Ken and Jeff created Scrum and they had this role called the product owner,
hmm
they had a very specific purpose for a product
hmm
owner. They
Yeah.
own the product, right?
hmm
So,
hmm
how many people can actually own a product? It's one owner. It's like a CEO. So if you're a
Right.
company of 5 people, you have one CEO. If you're a company of 5,000 people, you have one CEO. Same thing
hmm
when you're scaling Scrum or scaling any agile environment. You want one central decision maker. Otherwise, what's I've seen happen is people don't talk to each other, or they have different opinions. These people have these
hmm
different roles of product ownership, right? And so then all of a sudden the development team is like, "Hey, I developed something over here. person A loves it, person B doesn't. So now we're refactoring because those two weren't talking. And so now we're
Right.
spending multiple time reading that. Oh, now person C doesn't like it. So now we got to refactor. And we just keep churning on the same thing. So then they say, hey, we need a sign off. The three of you need to get together and say we agree on something before we do it. Well, then they
Yeah.
do, and they write it a certain way, but then it's not exactly what any of them were thinking, and none of them are happy. And so
Yes.
it just leads down this path of because no one person owns it, nobody really owns it, right? There's no
Yeah.
ownership, and the decision making slow, and the
Mm-hmm.
vision isn't aligned, and there's no one accountable for validating those decisions in the market. And so
Mm-hmm.
it just leads to, I guess, poor product ownership when you try to have multiple people doing it.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So, Jeff, so our audience is, somebody who's really curious to learn, okay, how does Scrum scale in a company, right? And this is about, okay, there's a company like CUNA Mutual or SSM, which is in Wisconsin, right? So there are already 5,000 people, and then company decides to go Agile, and they actually start out with Scrum. So in that context, like, how would you help somebody new understand, what are those scaling Scrum practices?
Yeah, so I think there's some main rules of thumb when we're going to start to scale Scrum. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you remember these relationships, it'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
When you have one product, you have one product owner.
Mm-hmm.
You have one product backlog.
Got you.
You have one to many teams.
Mm-hmm.
You have one definition of done, and you have one done increment, one done product at the end. So then the next question that people often ask is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what is a product? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where most people go wrong is they define their product very narrow, and maybe not even wrong. They just are optimizing for something maybe that they don't know they're optimizing for.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a very narrow product definition,
Mm-hmm.
just say your product is something, it's just this one little application or one little thing inside of it. Um, you're gonna at some point the
Yeah.
companies need to allocate dollars to say how much are we investing in this thing.
Right.
And then when something like COVID happens and you say, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, this plan we made for the whole year needs to get thrown out the window, it makes it
Right.
very difficult to move that money around, move the teams around to say, now we need to work on this, now we need to work on that. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be COVID. It can be, there was a company I worked with, and there was a major vendor that they had. And basically, once they came to them, I don't know, maybe it was March or something like that. And right
Mm-hmm.
after, they did all their yearly planning that they normally did, and
Mm-hmm.
they said, "Oh, we're not going to be able to accept payments for you." And this is a Fortune 500 company, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, "So this whole process isn't going to work." Well, there's going to be no cash flow coming in November if we don't get this thing fixed. Well,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they used to work, it might have taken 3 to 6 months to even put a team around that because you'd have had to like fight to find some people that actually could work on this problem. Well, if you
Yeah.
just have problem solving teams, you just say, hey, this is now the number one thing in the backlog.
Yeah.
Teams A, B, and C, you're working on it because you're the teams that are available, and
Mm-hmm.
start tackling this thing and figure it out. And so that
Yeah.
gives you a lot more flexibility as an organization to respond to change.
Right.
And and so that's those are that product definition is always a tricky thing, but I
Mm-hmm.
always look at a couple factors, and it's I look at the code bases. So where's our dependencies between the code when we're developing if this is a software product? I look
Mm-hmm.
at who are the people that are actually doing the work. If we
Mm-hmm.
think that we really have, we call them projects or products, but they're projects, and they're
Mm-hmm.
really the same people, but we're splitting them across five different things and wanting to work on all the same time. And then
Yeah.
you say, hey, I need your help working on this thing. And be like, no, no, that's my Tuesday thing. It's Wednesday. You have to wait till Tuesday to come back and work on me, with
Yeah.
me. Like that delays everything a week, right? Like those types of things happen. So why don't we
Yeah.
just stack and rack all those things into one list and just say,
Mm-hmm.
this is our broader product, and here's how we deliver business outcomes. I always think of it as a product. I also look at customers. Who do you actually buys your product, or who
Mm-hmm.
uses your product? And you should align around those types of people as well. And think about
Right.
what what people outside of your organization would call your product. So
Mm.
think about it outside in, not inside out. When you're in an organization, a lot of times
Yeah.
something feels like a product, but it's really not a product to anyone outside. You should almost
Right.
be able to put a P&L around any project you have. And your
Yeah.
own separate profit and loss center is what you should be able to put
Mm-hmm.
around it, right?
Yeah. Definitely. No, that's great. That's great. So I've actually had people ask me about the working from one product backlog, multiple, maybe two product owner or two or three teams working from a single product backlog. So what are some team agreements that you need to set or you need to coach teams to set so that to have that process smooth or have no confusion on that single product backlog?
Right. So if you've got one product backlog, you should have one product owner. Now,
Okay.
as you have multiple teams, there is a
Mm-hmm.
capacity that a product owner can only handle, right? Like at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point, man, you get to 10, 12 teams, like there's no way one person can keep up with that. So then maybe you do
Yeah.
need to split, right? That into a smaller product, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
have these product areas maybe inside of there, but you're bound by the capacity of the product owner really at that point and
Yeah.
what they can handle. But let's just say you have 5 teams and you got
Yeah.
one product owner and one product backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that case, the product owner needs to elevate themselves, right? If you're
Right.
Jeff Bezos, you're the CEO of Amazon. You're
Yeah.
not gonna occupy yourself with packaging Amazon boxes, right? You're not gonna
Yeah.
get down into the details. You're gonna say, how do I
Right.
set up an environment for people to be successful? And how do I make
Mm-hmm.
sure we're working on the most important things? How do I make sure I'm promoting innovation and creativity and all the
Mm-hmm.
things that I want to promote? And that's what you have to do as a product owner at that level.
Yeah.
So maybe at that level, you're like, I'm going to take more on a product management type role. I'm going to take on more of a leader type role, like a leader in an organization. And
Mm-hmm.
things that maybe some product owners would do if they just had one team, like something that's more maybe more analyst driven, more like more typically BA type of work,
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
more typical like PM type work in the traditional sense. Maybe that work gets delegated to the team and you have people on the team that do that for you. They're
Right.
not product owners. They just have, you just need these skill sets on this team to handle
Right.
that. So the product owner can now elevate, because just like if you were in a startup, that
Yeah.
owner might do some stuff that's, they might do their own accounting. They might do their own payroll. But eventually they're going
Right.
to say, hey, we have so many people. I can't be doing payroll every week. I need to go
Right.
work on something else in this strategic, partnership or whatever with this organization. And that's a better time served, better way for me to serve my time. Same thing with a product owner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, my experience of working with product owners in agile teams where they're product owners for multiple teams, they're stretched thin, and it's a huge responsibility to become one person to prioritize and give people direction in terms of where product will go, especially if there's no product management in the organization. Um, so it's a tough job, but I'm pretty sure that's the class that you teach
Yeah,
on
yeah,
how to
yeah.
do better product ownership.
It is. It is a really tough role. I mean, I don't know. All roles are tough, but it's
Yeah.
probably the toughest role because there's a lot of responsibility and you're kind of out on an island as this product
Hmm.
owner, right? Like no one really truly understands everything you're going through as a product owner,
Right.
because you are the only product owner in this case. And
Right.
it's this one product and no one has that full context. But, you can go talk to other product owners, scrum masters, people like that to help you, as you go through that journey in product
Yeah.
ownership.
Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We will sure to come back with more exciting videos on Agile topics.